Hello, my name is Waylon Lewis, and every week we'll bring you a new podcast with Elephant Journal. My name is Waylon Lewis, and I am here with Bri Wenke. We're going to be talking about art and all kinds of things. I am so excited.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I feel like I have the best job in the world because every single week I'm interviewing amazing people in wildly different arenas of what we call the mindful life. Yours, I don't remember how I came across you, but you are a visual artist. Is that how you would describe yourself?
Yes, I'm a painter and installation artist. And
that's one of your paintings right behind us, right?
Yeah.
A little hit of it, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So I saw your art, and then one of the first reels I watched was you hosting this like community gathering and this sort of video art installation. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, about a month ago, me and two fellow artists, good friends of mine, Sam Reuter and Morgan East, they're both figurative artists as well. We all have a different style though. The three of us wanted to put on our own independently curated exhibition here in Charleston, outside of any sort of institution, so we could do exactly what we wanted. And we wanted to create something for the community, something to provoke question and conversation and just get people out doing something different. And, a lot of bigger cities, New York, obviously, and, Denver, there's a lot of art installations, immersive things to go to and experience. And there's just none of that in Charleston, South Carolina, where I live. And, it is the South, and there's a lot to kind of fight back against there still, unfortunately. And, a lot
in terms of like lack of connection to art events, or obviously there's bigger issues, bigger fish to fry in that conversation.
Yeah. I guess if I'm just kind of being frank, in the art world, there is a decent contemporary art scene starting to, pick up a little bit, but it's still really just traditional art. It's a lot of bird paintings and marsh scenes, and which is beautiful, and beauty for the sake of beauty is completely valid. Yeah. But there's just more to it. Art doesn't have to be just pretty and nice. It can be a bit more thought evoking, a bit more raw. And that's what our exhibition was about. It was about grief and nostalgia. And we also had Seth Abramson. He's a video projectionist, and he created the immersive elements. And so it was a really cool collaborative effort. And we had like 700 people through, the doors over the 2 nights. It was very successful, and we felt really good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I got that vibe from the reel. We have tons of art in Boulder, surprisingly, because we're kind of small, and tons of art events. And it reminded me of one of these art events you go to where the art is obviously the star on some level, but it's bigger than that. It's like a experience, it's community, it's meeting people you know or don't know. And, I felt like you were doing a real service for Charleston, not just like a gallery event,
Yeah, it's about more evoking like all the senses as best you can, right? We curated the soundscape as well. We had a Preston Donovan. He was our audio engineer, and he kind of created the vibe, if you will, via soundscape and the visuals, and just the overall mood when you walk in, and just kind of shift everything, and like have you be like, what the hell is really going on? But that's what we want. We want I want you to feel something to, it was a really cool thing.
Yeah, so you mentioned that word beauty, which I think is such a loaded word. Beauty and art, depicting beauty. Often there's a lot of objectification, of course, in art. So how do you think about, your paintings are incredibly, I don't know what the word is quite, they are beautiful in some way. There is beauty, there is power, but they're also very raw, and it's hard to pick words that don't sound like cliches when they come out of my mouth, but evocative of some emotion. And I think you talk about emotion in terms of your art. So how do you think of emotion and beauty? And last night we were kind of green rooming that disassociation you mentioned, which was quite powerful.
Yes.
Just a little question.
Yeah. Teeny tiny. No, it's great. So like I was saying, beauty for the sake of beauty is totally valid, and like we need that too, you know, but it just gets, it can be a little shallow and overused, and you know, especially in terms of, you know, I briefly worked in the modeling industry, so like concepts of beauty and just all of that kind of being jammed down your throat and like these Western standards, I mean, talking like physically, right? But you know, the art that I'm trying to create is a bit more honest than that. And like honesty is where it's beautiful, I think, and where you can create something, you know, visceral. And I'm trying to convey, it's so hard to talk about, right? I'm trying to convey an emotional quality. I'm trying to say, how does it feel? We know what it looks like. We know what beauty looks like, but what's happening underneath it all? How is your body carrying the stories? How is it like hanging on to trauma? You know, that kind of like a couple years ago, actually, I was in a yoga class, and you know, I was very numbed out for a long time and just kind of like coasting through life and kind of like a bit like leaning into the masculine pretty hard and very hyper independent. Still something I struggle with, but you know, not really stopping to feel much of what was happening to me at all in life. And I was in a yoga class, and the teacher was talking about like hip openers and how you store your anger in your hips, and like this will be a release, and we're in pigeon and we're doing it, and all of a sudden I start sobbing. I'm like, how is this happening? I don't cry, not in public. What is happening? But it was just like, wow, it's really locked in your body.
And you know, I don't know you, but like I'm gonna underline what you just said. I feel like you really don't cry in public. Like that was a real release. There's a lot there.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of take on like the tough guy mentality and just kind of get on with things. And yeah, I'd never really stopped to really process much. So it's almost like, I feel like in my 30s now, I'm finally looking at, you know, the ways I've been carrying so much and I didn't even know it. And it serves a purpose, right? I think Brene Brown refers to it as body armor. And that's a really nice, like, visual and a physical thing to, like, a tangible thing to think about. Is like, you've got all this body armor on and it serves a purpose, right? It helps you survive, whatever you've got to survive in life, whatever. But then you get to a certain point. For me, it's like right now, and like it's kind of hindering relationships. And I'm watching myself go through these same patterns over and over, and just like beating my head against a wall. And it's like, oh, I've got to really shift something. Got to take off that armor. It's no longer serving you.
Well said. Yeah. From you know, I was saying like last night when we were sort of green rooming, talking about what we would talk about today, the introversion thing. Like often there's not a lot of comfort in being openly dramatic, you might say in quotes, but emotional, just beautifully raw and vulnerable, which are annoyingly, like we were saying about authenticity, kind of catchwords now, thanks to people like Brene Brown and Pema Chodron and all these wonderful people. But the real vulnerability is often kind of ugly and kind of beautiful at the same time, right?
Yeah, it is. And being somebody who is pretty introverted, like I really crave solitude. I do well there. I also really, but you know, like a week in the studio and I'm ready to see people again, but maybe for like 2 hours. And
yeah,
then I'm like, all right, that's enough. I'm gonna go stare at a wall now and, you know, de-stimulate.
Yeah, I'm like the exact opposite. You know, I really need my like 2 hours of solitude, and then I'm ready for a week of floating around like a butterfly, having what people like yourself would view as incredibly irritating conversations.
I don't know. It's not irritating if there's substance, you know. I don't know. I think there's a lot of people think introverts are just shy. They're just shy and like a little insecure, and like everyone has insecurity, of course, but like, I don't know. Speaking plainly, it's just like so much interaction stays very shallow, very surface, and it's monotonous and it's the same, and it can be kind of painful. So I just don't really like care to engage in it. But if we're talking like we're going in like deep diving, not snorkeling, scuba diving, then you know, you've kind of got my attention. And because I exist in my studio and in solitude, like in a very analytical place all the time, you know, to a fault. And
yeah. But you seem to have really clear I mean, maybe that's just what happens as we get older, but very clear understanding of how you work, which is interesting. Like that you rest in that analytical state of mind easily, but now you're maybe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like you're saying you're transitioning into a more, you know, working with emotions and being comfortable taking off that body armor.
Yeah, it's a whole new world, honestly. It's it can be a lot like, and it, you know, definitely don't have it all figured out by any means. But it's a lot about sort of losing my train of thought here. I had it.
Well, just that transition from like 20s to 30s to I'm in my 40s, and, you know, getting more and more comfortable taking off the body armor and not even putting it back on, to me, is sort of the path.
Yeah, it's this new identity altogether almost. And things that once worked, they don't work anymore. And it's like, who am I now if I'm not like this like tough guy who's like got it figured out? Like, yeah. I'm not. I'm trying to be softer, and I'm trying to like be more feminine and like find that balance, because everyone's got it, like they're on the spectrum somewhere, like feminine and masculine. It's just like finding, you know, the balance for both. And
but you know, men obviously can and should be incredibly vulnerable, and that's where genuine strength can rest. You know, it's always curious, like when we talk about feminine and masculine, I feel like we're always put in this box of being independent or strong, and I'm like, I mean, I was brought up in Buddhism where we were like taught to be raw and gentle and open in a way, but that was our strength. So
yeah, there is a lot of strength and vulnerability. I mean, it's like the hardest thing to do. It's the hardest thing to do. Like, it's easy to just be like, to lock up and like not want to talk about any of it and just think you've got it figured out. Like that feels good. That's easy. Being vulnerable feels really painful, like real painful.
Yeah, and I love, you know, bringing it back to the art. I love that we're just jumping into this, because this is completely what, to me, your art evokes. And I feel like that, you know, I love a lot of different artists, local artists as well as just artists I've run into over the years. But that seems to be the exact medium that you're working in, is this kind of path or conversation.
Yeah, it's that visceral sort of emotion. And for me, English language can be a little limiting, right? Like, I mean, you know, you're a master of it. You're a writer. You've got a lot more, you know, you're very good at that. But for me, like, we only have like, what, 4 words for emotions, right? It's like, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm angry.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, other languages, which I'm not going to pretend like I know, but they've got like words for these nuanced emotions, these really like complex emotions that take like 2 English sentences to describe.
That's so interesting.
So sometimes, yeah. So it just feels kind of limiting, and it's hard to like explain, because it is so complex, and there's such like a massive world now that I'm kind of in it, and like I'm starting to feel things that I really, you know, hadn't felt before, and just ways of being vulnerable, and just different emotions, and claiming new spaces in my life. And yeah, it's just very interesting. And as I try to process that, I'm trying to communicate that, I think. So art's an expression, of course, but it's also like a communication. It's a language, really. It's a vocabulary. And, you know, I like to think that it's very important, because like when you've been at your lowest low, you know, maybe you've read something, or you've like read a poem, or like you heard a line in music, or you like saw a piece of artwork, and you're like, holy shit, someone else has thought that before. Someone else has felt that before, and I thought I was alone in that completely. And that's really powerful, and it can make you feel like you're not alone, and like there is, you know, some hope. And I just think it's a very powerful thing. And, you know, if you think art's not that important, which sometimes, for example, our school systems like to kick that first, right? You know, music, we don't need that. We don't need dance. We don't need art. But it's like, try having gotten through the pandemic without your video games, without your music, without your books. Like, you would have lost your goddamn mind. So it's very it's vital, really, I think. And, you know, I'm hopeful that like there will be one person to connect with a piece in such a way that that makes it worth it, makes it, you know, oh, it does matter, you know, because sometimes I'm creating wall coverings, you know, sometimes I'm like, what does all of this even matter? What does it mean?
Tell me about a moment like that where you could see it matter to someone, and like how that felt.
Yeah, so like I've had various comments over the years about what the art evokes in people, and you know, I've had people say, oh, it reminds me of a car accident victim, or like, you know, it's kind of like disturbing for them, which is great in its own way. Like, it's like good, and you feel something. That's not offensive at all. Like, I love to hear that. Something that really just like hit for me was this woman commented on a piece, and it was like one of the first really, like, I don't know, body sort of flaying, you know, energetic paint kind of flying off the body paintings. And this woman said, I just had chemo and this is exactly what it feels like. Oof. And I just like, I sent her a print of that painting. It just was so amazing that somebody could see it and understand, like, could relate to it in a feeling, because that's what it is. It's not intellectual. Like, we intellectualize everything. I mean, I certainly do. Getting into the body is a lot harder. And for her to get that just from seeing it on Instagram on a tiny screen, you know, it was just like, oh shit, this is for something then. And connected with her in some way. So that was very cool.
Yeah, you're literally, I mean, you talked about the arts in schools and stuff. I think the arts literally save people's lives, as well as our emotional lives in many different moments. You know, I know when you said, you know, that feeling when you, in my case, when I read something when I was like 18 or 17 or something, and my heart was broken for the first time, and I had gone off to college, and I read this Jack Kerouac book, The Town and the City, and he wrote about that sort of young love and that broken heart from an emotional point of view, not just telling it. And it really was that profound and also sort of very simple and almost simplistic realization where you're like, oh, other people go through this depth of like epic suffering that it was for me then. And it transformed the whole experience somehow into not feeling alone, which sometimes is all we need.
Yeah, it's simple. It doesn't have to be complex, you know?
Yeah.
And that in itself is a form of community, because what's community, right? It's like being seen, being heard, finding your people, which is hard to do as we get older, you know, and even, I don't know, it's kind of a whole other tangent, but, you know, growing up as, from a very female perspective, like it's always been very, very hard to find female friendship. We're sort of trained to compete with each other, you know. There's a limited seating at the table, whether it's like sports, whether it's, you know, business or like academics, and like it's a really male-driven table usually, and you know, we all learn pretty quick, oh, we've got to like heighten the masculine tendencies in ourselves in order to have a seat at this table. And again, this is, you know, this is like a whole nother conversation, but it's just been, I just went like a long time not realizing how much I needed female friendship and needed, you know, to lean into the feminine, back to that. And but it's hard for a lot of people, and I think comparison is like the enemy of connection, right? And like all we fucking do is compare to each other on these platforms. It's just like, look how cool my life is, look what I do, look what I made, look at, like, you know, like my makeup. Like it's just a big comparison game, and it's just so hard to when we place so much value on the externals, like, and not really cultivating like value in ourselves in other ways, or realize we have value in other ways. It's how are you going to connect with people on any real level? And yeah, there's a lot there, but community is just so important, and I try to contribute to it in, you know, the small ways that I can, considering I prefer to be alone most of the time.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, we talked about that last night a bit, or in DMs, but like that, again, you know, I sort of make my living through media and social media. That's my medium. And it's something, obviously, I have a lot of a love-hate relationship with. And watching your reels and all that, it felt very fun, but also emotional, you know, depending on the one, and the music and the poem, and, you know, the layering of these different art forms. It was it felt like a connecting, like you said, that word connection, like comparison is the thief of connection, I think you said.
Mm-hmm.
Like your social media, and especially those events, felt like you were able to make your art a connection with people instead of just competing or trying to get sales or trying to get followers. It felt emotional in a really sane, kind, raw way, like not just emotional in a melodramatic Bravo TV kind of way, you know?
That's really cool to hear, and especially coming from you, I appreciate that a lot, because we all know how much effort the reels take. You know, it's like a whole new world, a whole nother task, a whole nother thing you need like another person for, but we're all doing it ourselves.
Yeah, I put like no effort into them.
Thanks for listening. Hope you're getting a lot out of it. The full conversation is on our indie platform that supports and continues our work, elephantjournal.com/videos. You can subscribe, listen, watch, and participate there. And when you do so, you'll keep these mindful videos and podcasts going. elephantjournal.com/videos. May it be of benefit.